Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Music Made Me. Thank you so much for joining us once again. We truly do appreciate it. Today we have a very special conversation with musician Dante Bowe. Dante is a man of faith. His journey with God began at the age of 16 after a very special encounter, and since that time, he has been on a mission to inspire others and spread the joy of music. In 2017, he released his debut album, which was fully independent, and since that time, he has been gaining the attention of a lot of people, and over the last 3 years, he's been writing and recording for his new album, Circles. During our conversation, we talked about his journey, the new album, and the personal stories behind some of the songs on the album. So please enjoy our conversation with Dante Bowe. I want to go back to your early days as a country boy back in rural North Carolina on the farm. More of a sports guy, right? Not so much a heavy music guy back then?
Yep. So my family, just like any Southern family, just big on like sports. My brother played football. I played basketball. Then I went on to play baseball. I was better at baseball, so I stuck with baseball. And then eventually I always knew I could sing, but it was like in the South, there weren't many like known singers or anything like that. So it was just like something I knew I could do, but nothing I really aspired to do.
Right.
And
And
so,
your whole family could sing, right? Because I've heard you say that basically every member of your family, except for your mom and dad, could sing.
yeah, like literally my grandmother, my grandfather, my aunts, uncles, really like my mom and dad were the only two that, that really can't sing, but they would tell you they can sing.
But you would tell them different then?
Oh, I'm telling you the truth. I'm going to tell you the truth. They can't.
And so it was when you were in grade 7, right? At the age of 13 at a talent competition where singing really took you and you realized that it might be something that you may want to do?
Oh, wow. Yeah. I forgot about that. Yeah. So yeah, I did a talent show that I was so nervous to do just because like up until then I had like sang in my local church a little bit, but like never like to my friends or anything. And my friends only knew me for what I did in school. And so, but yeah, that was the moment and then I just felt the love and like that people really responded well. That was one of the moments where I felt like, okay, yeah, this is something that I think I want to do.
So what was the difference between that and sports? Because in sports, you're receiving that love as well, right? When you do a good job. So what was the difference in the response when you sang as to when you were playing sports? Do you remember?
Yeah, I think it was singular. Like, so like in sports, it's like everyone's like kind of like congratulated. Like it's a team effort, like a real team effort.
Right.
I feel like when I was doing the talent show and I sang, it felt like something that, that I felt responsible for. I'm like, okay, like this is something that's in me, like, it's not like 5 of us, 6 of us up here. It's like, just myself. And I think the feeling is just different. You feel ownership, like in a good way, ownership, not like me, but like you feel like, okay, like this is my talent. This is my gift. You know what I mean? Not just 12 other guys with me.
Right. Yeah. And I've heard you say that you were a little embarrassed because you had a high voice when you were younger. So did singing help that
And my
as
uncles
well?
used to
And
pick on me.
oh, did they?
My uncles would pick on me. I remember one specific time I was knocking on the door. My uncle's like, who is it? I'm like, it's Dante. He was like, say it with your chest. It's Dante. And then randomly my voice, raspy now and very low, but
Yeah.
I was embarrassed because I had a high voice growing up.
So did singing help that? Did it give you more confidence within your voice?
I'd say like me watching other singers like Al Green and like Aretha, like these different people that had like this range that was really cool. made me feel like, okay, like this is important as a singer. Like, okay, I have a higher tone than other guys, but like it's like it helped me. Then obviously my voice went low, but
Yeah.
before puberty, it was like, okay, I'm confident in this because there's other singers with this high voice. Yeah.
I've heard you talk about singing to tape and recording to cassette tape. Is that something that you did?
Yeah. So I would, well, I don't know if you remember the tapes. You can like rewind them and like record over
Yeah.
the beat. So I would literally like rewind and record my voice like over the beat. And then later my mom and dad got me this like super rinky dink program called Fruity Loops. And like it's technically like Pro Tools, but it's like for like dummies.
Oh,
And
okay.
so I'm sorry if anybody's listening, like I still use Fruity Loops, but no, but and so I used to record like all these like R&B songs. I wanted to be an R&B singer before, you know, I was 16. I think 16 is when I decided to do like more Christian music, but like
Right.
I was doing just R&B music, like songs about love, songs about my life and whatever I was going through at the time, which was probably nothing. But so yeah, like that's what I would do. Yeah, I would record in my room all the time, like every day. And honestly, that's how I got out of sports actually.
Right.
Because I would sit in that room like every day and it became like my new passion and zeal.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, did that help in being a kid and just being able to sort of release your emotions? Because as a kid, we often keep that bottled up inside. So, did that allow you to get those emotions out in a positive way?
I'd say so. My mom and dad were really good about like having conversations with me. So anytime I would get in trouble, it was always like, why'd you do that? And I would say like, well, because so-and-so told me to. Well, was it profitable to listen to so-and-so? Like, look where you are now, like, you know, all this stuff. So I was very in tune with like my emotions and I knew how to articulate them well because of my parents. And
Oh,
so
okay.
songwriting became natural, but I think it did ultimately help me kind of like get some frustrations out because you can sing things that you can't say.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
I would sing things that if I would have said them, I'd be in trouble. But my mom was like, "Oh, that's so good," you know. So, yeah.
And when did you start writing?
Oh wow. I don't know the age, but I think I'd have to say I was maybe 10, 11, because my
Wow.
first song was like a rap song that I remember my mom and dad was on the porch and I ran up to them and I just started rapping this song and it was really rhyming, like ABC 1, 2, 3. I want to be like it was really rhyming. But I remember my parents were just like looking at each other like, okay, this is decent. Like this is good. Yeah,
And do you still have any of those tapes they recorded?
I do. I actually do. I have songs that I recorded like in middle school, like still on the there's somewhere on the internet because
I'll have to
YouTube.
look
I
for
like
that.
don't look for it, please. Don't look for it, dude.
Oh, that's awesome. And then I know you've told the story quite a bit before, but talk about when you're 16 and you're in your bedroom and you're listening to Kira Sheard Free
Mm.
and that moment and what that meant for you in your life.
Yeah, that moment was like, well, it's unexpected. I honestly, I got on this like gospel kick around that time in my like high school, you know, age. I started like listening to a lot of gospel. Then I fell in love with Kira shit. So it was just a normal day, just playing it in the room. And then I just started bawling, just crying, and had an encounter with God, and that pretty much changed my entire life. And so I don't remember exactly how long that encounter was, but I do know I woke up the next day and I didn't go to school. And my mom felt like she came in the room and she said she felt like something happened. And she was like, I'm gonna just let him like rest. And so I just slept. Woke up like, oh, you didn't wake me up for school. She's like, I didn't feel like I wanted, I feel like I should have, you know. And so but yeah, that encounter changed my whole life. I started doing Christian music then, or faith-based music, because I would still write about life and love, but it was from a different place. It was like from my faith, you know what I mean? Like what I actually believe about love, what I actually believe about, life, instead of like, life is this. I'm like actually going to speak, the truth over life. So that's when that whole thing happened in me. So
That must have been pretty strong, because I know that, people can get feelings every once in a while about different things, but, they're fleeting, they come and go. But to, in one moment, have something catch you so strongly that it forever changes your path. It's not just a week or two that you're like, oh, I feel compelled to do this. It's a whole
right.
lifetime. Like that must have been a huge pull for you.
It was, it was like, honestly, it was a culture shock, because I remember like the first few months, I was just like, what am I doing? Or do I really want to do this? Like, and I started creating, I mean, bro, like within months, I started creating like this buzz in my town for me singing Christian music. When I was singing R&B music, it was happening, but it was a little slower. And I remember thinking to myself, like, oh my gosh, like this is like happening. Obviously, it was a local scale, but I would do like little talent shows, get $75 for like little things and like around the city. But yeah, it was really hard actually at first, and figuring out like, how do I still write about relevant things and not lose people because of my faith? You know what I mean?
Yeah, for
And so
sure.
that was like a little pull, and me learning how to use faith to talk about real things and not make people feel like you're living in some magical world, like you're living in some other world. You're
Right.
not here with us. You know what I mean? And so anyway, I feel like I got into a place where I know how to do that. And it really had to come just through honesty, me just being honest in my lyrics. But yeah.
Right. And then talk about your work within the church and not just singing, because is it true you dropped out of high school to go full time into ministry a couple of years after that?
That is true. You know me. I did. I dropped out of high school, and um, I went, which was crazy because my dad was so mad at me.
Right. I was going to
He,
ask if that was like parent permission or if you just did it.
yeah. So my mom, my mom pretty much gave me permission to do it
Okay.
without my dad. So my mom and dad, they got divorced when I was like 12, 13. So so anyway, I was with my mom, living in my mom's house, but I would go. My dad lived 5 minutes down the street, actually. So I'm
Okay.
always at both places. So specifically, I was at my mom's house, and I tell her, she's like, "Yes, do it." She didn't even think about it, and so I had to like ask my dad, and he was just like, "You don't need to drop out of school. That's a horrible decision. This is crazy. We worked so hard for you to finish school. You can go to college and all this stuff." And he also believed in my dreams. He wanted me to be a singer. He thought I could do it. He just didn't want it to be at the expense of like my education.
Right.
And so he was like, just know you can always come home. But he ended up being like, all right, he can go on the road or whatever. But he was like, just come home if you're tired of it. But I never went home.
Wow. And you talk about your parents' divorce. That was right around the time where you found your voice in singing. So, how did that affect that transition of your parents separating? Did the music help in that period?
You know, I have really, really good, I hate talking about my parents because it sounds like I'm being like fake, but I have really, really good parents. And so I never felt burdened by their
Oh, okay.
decision to like be apart, because they were so good at like including me and my brother. And so we kind of like all went through it together.
Oh,
And
okay.
we felt pain on both sides. We felt also like relief on both sides. And so they were happier and we were happier. And my dad literally moved, like he literally lives like 5 minutes down the street. And so we didn't, I didn't feel like any like, oh, my parents are getting divorced.
Right. No
I was like, okay,
resentment or anything like that.
yeah, they were so real, they were so present
Right.
that I didn't really even, I guess, had time to like really notice. My dad is like living away. My mom is living here because they were always at my games. They always came to everything. So, I had really good parents. Yeah.
And so what did that transition look like when you left high school then? Did you go to college? Because you got your degree, right? Or your diploma, rather.
Diploma. Yeah. So I didn't go to high school right after. I went on the road, which I promised my dad. I said, I'm usually going to go homeschool. As soon as I get on the road, I'm going to go homeschool. He's like, okay. That was actually one of the deciding factors. Like, he was like, okay, if you go to homeschool, whatever. And so I didn't go for the first year, which was like a whole nother struggle. And then I decided, like, okay, I'm going to go. And I went to homeschool on the road, graduated, and yeah, that's pretty much. It was a process though. I did a year of like touring and like plowing before I ever went back to school, and then I randomly
Okay.
had a thought like, oh my gosh, you promised you would get your diploma. So I just did it out of like, love for my family. I'm like, okay, at least I can like follow my dreams with no burden. And I'm
Right.
like, oh man, I don't have a diploma. What if this doesn't work? You know what I mean? And so, yeah.
And so what was that year of touring? Were you touring as a solo artist? Because you didn't have any material out then. So
Yeah,
what
no,
was did the touring look like?
I was touring as a background vocalist, which my dad
Okay.
hated too. My dad hated that I sang background vocals. But but I sang background vocals for Eddie James, and I did that for a year. I did that for years, but I did it for a year, and before I decided to actually go get my diploma. And honestly, singing background vocals, I was like, maybe this is what I'm gonna be. It just felt like a long journey, even though a year seems short. For somebody that's really hoping for something, it's like it felt like almost like tiring and kind of exhausted. Like I felt exhausted.
Right. And so when did you start writing for yourself and starting to meet other people within sort of the gospel music community and start writing with other people and meeting other people?
So I'd say like I I'd sang with Eddie James for like 6 years, bro.
Oh, wow.
Before I met anyone. six
Wow.
years, and I was doing the same exact thing. And the first 3 years, I had lost my burn to write. I wrote all through school. Like, I had that little, like I said, the tape recorder, all the stuff.
Yeah.
And when I started singing background vocals for him, I lost that zeal to write. And then 3 years later, I just started picking it back up. And I'd write songs. And Travis Green randomly called me. He's like this gospel musician, like famous gospel guy. And he was like, do you want to be on my album? And I'm like, oh my gosh. Like, and I guess he had heard me from just a concert that I had done with
Oh,
with
okay.
this group singing background vocals. Sometimes he would ask me to do lead. So I would do lead sometimes. And so Travis asked me to do that. And from that day, I had a few opportunities in the gospel. Nothing significant, nothing. I was still poor. And my parents didn't know I was poor. And my
Oh,
parents didn't
okay.
know any of that stuff. So 6 years singing with Eddie. I leave. I do this song with Travis Green. Um, I quit my job as a worship pastor, and I'm living on my friend's couch. I'm literally homeless, and I lived on their couch for years. I mean, not for years, for months. It was 6 months to a year, and left there. Went to Columbus. Lived in this one-bedroom trailer, and that's when randomly, I still don't know when interviewers ask me questions about this, I don't know. But randomly, while living in this one bedroom trailer, writing to me some of the greatest songs in my catalog right now that's out, um, I got calls from just my heroes, people that I looked up to, started like getting my number from like people. And then I got offered record deals from like pretty much every record label, that's like, that's doing something. And so yeah, like that's kind of like a short, the short version of that story.
What year was it when you started to get all those calls?
2019.
Okay. So you had already released your debut then? Because your
Well,
debut came in 17, right?
yep. So I had already released my debut. Um, that didn't do well. No, I'm just kidding. But I released my debut, and as a complete independent artist, I had no connections to anything or anyone. I just felt like I was supposed to just do it,
Oh, okay.
and it was a $10,000 project, so it was like low, which sounds like a lot, but like in the industry, that's like low budget. So like
Right.
it was like 10 grand for everything, marketing, all this stuff, and and I remember thinking like, oh, so much money, oh my gosh, how am I gonna do this? And yeah, it came out, and I had Potter and Friend, which did do good.
Yep.
The single it debuted on Billboard, which is crazy to me. And but yeah, it came out right. It came out before all the opportunity came.
Okay.
And maybe I have to credit some of the opportunity to the album. I think people found it eventually. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And then so in 2018 you joined Maverick City. What did that mean? Because that was sort of your first opportunity, right? Outside of performing with others and having your debut album, that was kind of the first big one, right?
That was my first big one, I'd say. Uh it happened just meant some friends were in a group text and they were like, we should write together. It wasn't named Maverick City. And I was like, sure, I'll come. And it was just some good friends I love. And went and wrote some songs and we decided to demo them. And we had a camera crew come in and while we demoed and we put that song out. It was a demo. I was chewing gum and everything and the thing. And yeah, bro, I don't even know how that even blew up. But like we had no marketing, we had no PR, we had no budget really. And so that's how that happened. It was an accident. Maverick City was an accident. And we took what was happening organically and we made it on purpose. Like we started thinking through like, what do we want to name this? Like, what if it blows up? Like all this stuff. And Atlanta was, called the Maverick City. So we decided to just, since it was an Atlanta-based group, we were like, let's just name it Maverick City. So that's what we did.
And before that, all those years of, like you say, living on couches and living in small apartments, what was it that kept you moving forward and driving? Was it your faith a big part of it in why you kept moving forward?
I think it was just I was getting closer.
Right.
It's like, I feel hope so strongly. I couldn't, and that is my faith. That like I felt hope even when it looked like I'm gonna be like one of those little chicken circlet artists, which is like okay to be. I was like, man, it wasn't my dream or my vision, but I'm okay with that. Like I kind of have a buzz. I'm okay with this. This is fine. I'll stay here. But like I felt hope and I felt like I was so close to something and I didn't know exactly what it was, but I felt like, man, I'm gonna be on the brink of something soon. And this is right before all the record deals and stuff. And I think that's why I stayed with it, is because I was getting closer and I felt hopeful for my future. So.
And when did you start touring around to different ministries and performing and all of that? Was that in and around that 2018, 2019?
2019, I'd say my started getting like calls and like my manager is the reason why I didn't give up to. Her name is Sydney. I was living on a couch and her and a guy named Taiwan, which are my two managers, used to come every day like, why aren't you doing music? Like, what is going on? And that's how they became my management. They pretty much started like doing stuff for me just randomly. And so anyway, during 2019, they kept calling like, we getting calls to do this, this festival and that festival. And I didn't have an album out. I did have a song with Maverick City out. And so yeah, I guess it was around that time where I was getting a lot of calls to do things that were like really cool.
It's kind of crazy to think because when you look online at sort of all the stuff you've done, it feels like it was over a much longer span. Like you've been able to record with so many groups now and so many different ministries. And it's funny to think that it's only been 2 and a bit years that you've
I
really
know.
had the opportunity to be doing this.
I know, dude. I've in the last 2 years, like Tasha Cobbs, I wrote with Hillsong, Bethel, and Elevation, and like you don't, Carrie Job, and like I've written for like pretty much Stephanie Grayson, everybody that I want to write for Israel, and like I've worked with, and it was only been in 2 years, and I didn't think about it until you just said it, because it does. When you look on YouTube, it feels like I've been an artist for a little while, like
Yeah, exactly.
but it's literally been like 2 years of just going really hard and working on the album at the same time.
Yeah, that's the thing. When did the album come about? Not so much in you planning it, but in being able to meet up with people and realize that it was going to be possible to record it and release it.
Yeah, so I I had 2 albums. I had one album that I was working on in 2018. I'm like, this is gonna be my next independent project. Um, I pretty much shelved it. Felt like, no, I'm gonna wait on that. And then I signed my deal in 2019 and started working on this like other project. And I loved it. Went to California the end of 2019 and worked with this guy named Lael. And we wrote something so incredible that's actually on my new project called Keep Going. And that made me can my other project. And I said, I only want to work with you. And so I pretty much got in the studio with Lael and we worked, on this new project, Circles, day in and day out. And yeah, I was working on that project while doing all these other features and like kind of getting a buzz or whatever.
Right.
And but yeah, I've been working on my album for 2 years. The one that's coming out on the 26th. I've been working on it for 2 years.
Right. And what was that like writing for it? Because your first album that you released independently, I know there was a song on there that you wrote from when you were 16. So you had a long time to write that album and put it
Yeah.
together. Whereas this
Yeah.
one, it was just 2 years. So was it a much different writing process and creating it?
Yeah. Much different writing process. I sat with my grandmother, and my grandfather, because this is like the craziest time in history right now, the racial tension and stuff.
Yeah.
And so I just sat with them and got perspective. And I wrote a lot of songs about my family, a
Yeah.
lot of songs about my family. And then, and this is all in the last 2 years. So these are brand new songs that I've written. And wrote a bunch of songs about relational things like relationships and stuff.
Right.
And it was a different writing process in the sense of I I got in the studio and I freestyled a lot. Like I didn't like go back and try to get all these structured songs. I wanted
Right.
songs that felt honest and like raw and like felt like my lineage and my grandmother's courage and my grandfather's courage. And so Lael helped me do that. And so yeah.
And some songs on the album I wanted to talk to you about because I had a crazy experience. I was listening to the album and I had a question pop up in my mind. And the question was I was going to ask you, are you trying to create songs that stay true to your faith while at the same time appealing to everyone? And it's funny because as I was asking myself that question, Keep Going popped up and I heard the lyrics. We got to believe what we pray, believe what we preach, believe what we sing about, believe he's a king. And so it was just kind of crazy that that question popped into my mind about faith be
Yeah.
versus mainstream, and if that'll hurt your mainstream, and
Mhm.
and that those lyrics pop up, and it was just crazy timing. And so I'll ask you that question: has there ever been pressure, especially going into this album when it's not independent, in pulling back on the faith so that it might have more of a chance to go mainstream?
Yeah, no. Like I know who I am. And so I kind of trust who I am. I trust who like God's made me. And so if there's usually when I'm writing, I want people to know who I am.
Right.
And and I am a believer. And so I want that to be a part of my story. I'm also a son. I'm also, a boyfriend to somebody. I'm also, a grandson and a best friend to someone that doesn't believe in the Lord. And I'm a best friend to somebody that is like radically,
Right.
believer,
Yeah.
and I want it to all be felt. And even if you don't believe, I feel like this record is not even about necessarily trying to, you know, get someone to believe what I believe, but it's
Hmm.
to kind of like give you an invitation. I guess it's an invitation to something else. Like, you know what I mean? And so,
Right.
so, I feel like when I listen to my favorite albums, like Lauryn Hill, Miseducation, I feel like it was just one big invitation to go deeper. And I feel like creatively, I became a better musician after listening to that. And so some people are going to become a better musician after listening to my album. Some people are going to become, like, oh, I want to know what Jesus is about. I want to know what God is about. Some people are going to be like, man, I just feel encouraged, whatever. But
Right.
I just think it's just one big invitation. And I want to be very, upfront about who I am, whether it's like, you know, I'm dating someone or whether it's like, I love the Lord, I want it to be like in your face. Let's move on from it. I'm not trying to guinea pig anyone into believing what I want them to believe. I
Yeah.
want you to just know who I am. So
Right. And
yeah.
in Love is in the Air, you have a line in there. I've seen rock bottom and didn't think I would ever bounce back. So what was rock bottom for you?
Okay. Thank you for talking about Love is in the Air. My favorite song on my album is Love is in the Air. And I'm actually doing a virtual performance like next week in California, which I'm really excited about. But Love is in the Air is about my grandmother and grandfather's marriage. I watched my
Okay.
grandmother at, beside my grandfather while he's laying in his hospital bed, and he passed away the next day. And I said, you guys did it. You stood the test of time, like till death do you part. You actually did it. Oh my God. I couldn't believe it. And them laughing and stuff while they're not, like they were still in love. And I couldn't believe it. I was like, I don't know, maybe it's just so foreign in my generation.
Right.
but
Yeah.
but I was like, oh my gosh, my grandmother and grandfather, they broke a curse in our family. They stayed together their entire lives. That means it's possible, and it's possible to find true love. And so I'll talk to my grandmother, and pretty much a collective of stories is in this song, Love is in the Air. And at one point during the infidelity, that my grandfather, cheated on my grandmother. So that line is about her.
Okay.
So I've seen rock bottom and didn't think I would ever bounce back. But something about you changed to what I thought love was. Like love is not about you do something for me, I do something for you. Love is about I choose you. You're not
Right.
perfect and you hurt me sometimes, but I choose you. Like my mom chooses to love me. I choose to love her. I choose to love my friends. And so in that moment, my grandmother, could look at my grandfather like something about you changed what I thought love was. I guess I had the wrong idea all along. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like love is not some fairy tale. Love is not some rainbow, like like clouds in the sky. Love is sometimes rain and pain and heartache and yeah, it's all the things. So
That's
that's what that
awesome.
line is about. My grandmother's rock bottom.
That's awesome. I'm glad I asked you about that.
I'm so glad you asked me that.
And then in All God's Children, you say something about my dad was a gangster. Now, is that literal?
My dad was the biggest drug dealer in our town.
Really?
And I didn't find out until I was like, I'd say like 14, 15. And he stopped when I was 16 because I got saved. But he did it my entire life. And we lived a privileged life. And I didn't necessarily see them go to work. So I knew there was something about it. Like, I'm like,
Oh,
man, this
okay.
is like weird. But my dad was a gangster. And like, he's not anymore. But he still has like himself. Like he still acts the same, like, but he's just a teddy bear. I mean, he's a believer now, but he still has that, he's like just very like laid back, chill, like just that guy. So I said my daddy was a gangster, got turned it around. Now my daddy is a gangster with a robe and a crown, and that's the truth.
That is so awesome. And I'll ask you one more question and then I'll let you go. I'm sorry I kept you so long.
Oh, for
but
sure. It's all good.
I love it. So you were 16. Kiara Sheard's song affected you in a very powerful way. Now, with this new album, do you hope that it will not necessarily have that same effect in leading people to God, but that it'll have the same effect in just creating something within them, a power within them?
Yeah. I hope, like, I wanted to create something that felt like, and this is just being honest, I want to create something that felt like hope. And some songs I write with the intention of like, I want someone to encounter him,
Yeah.
This album, I feel like I wrote, out of like, I want somebody to feel hopeful. This has been a hell of a year. Like, it's been the worst season to kind of like endure. Like, my grandmother lost my grandfather January 2020 and had to quarantine in that house.
Right.
The rest of the year alone because we couldn't see her because she's vulnerable where she was. Now we're good. We can, she was just with me at a recording, but
right.
I wanted to write this album for people like her. They're stuck, like that feel like, man, like, yeah, everyone's going about their lives, but I lost my dad. I lost my grandpa. I lost my cousin. I lost this person. And I want these people to feel hopeful after the year they just kind of like encounter. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, for sure.
And so I wrote an album full of hope. And I think that's the message. It's just, there is light at the end of the tunnel. We all go through circles, but we don't have to keep spinning and like feeling like, I'm going crazy. But he's the God of the circles. Like, he is all in control. Like, everyone goes through these things. And I like the circle song. It starts off by saying, you might not believe it, but everybody got a story to tell. Like, you're not the only one. You know what I mean? So
right, yeah.
Just I want people to feel hopeful. Like, so yeah.
Well, that's awesome. Well, Circles is the album. It comes out on an amazing day because it's actually my birthday, the day that it's being released.
It is
so that's awesome.
My best friend's birthday.
Really? Is it?
Yes, we're celebrating their birthdays the day before. And then like we're doing a release party I feel so bad having like my release date on their birthday, but I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Well, you know what? Thank you so much for taking the time, for taking a break from your lunch and all the craziness that you're going through right now. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, man. This was awesome.
Thank you guys so much once again for listening. We truly do appreciate it. And thank you to Dante, of course, for stopping by and sharing his very personal story. We hope that you'll check out his new album, Circles, available wherever you stream your music. And please also make sure you are liking, sharing, following, subscribing to us on whatever streaming service you are listening on. And please also hop over to social media and give us a follow there. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Just search The Music Made Me and we should pop up. Thank you guys so much once again, and we'll see you next time on The Music Made Me.